downloaded the Buckeye Leafcast with your host, Andrew T. Evans, with special guest, Chris Stefanick.
Well, sir, I'm ready if you are.
Let's do it.
Let's do it, folks. Here we are. It's another Buckeye Leafcast. I am Andy Evans, and my right-hand man joining me as he always does. I'm sure he's going to break down a big, big win from the Buckeyes over the Maryland Terrapins. That is, of course, the one and only Mr. Christopher Stefanick, the Intergalactic Buckeye Fan himself.
Oh, I'm feeling good, Andy.
I kind of did that backwards, sir. I decided, I don't know, so let's switch things up for a change, you know?
That's all right. I can switch it.
You've been known to hit on both sides of the plate, have you? Well, the Buckeyes indeed, Chris, come up huge. The 10th ranked, now 5-1 Buckeyes, 62. The formerly 3-1, now 3-2 Maryland Terrapins, 14 Buckeyes, really getting it done on both sides of the ball, dude. 584 total yards, 303 through the air, 281 on the ground. Most of those air stats came by way of our boy JT. He was 20 of 31, 261 yards, 3 touchdown passes, no interceptions. Once again for the fifth-year senior from Wichita Falls, Texas, and boy. You want to talk about some rushing stats, Chris, and I'm sure you're going to get into this in a second, but 8 different guys carried the ball yesterday. 50 times total to the Buckeyes rush the ball for a total of 281 yards, 5 touchdowns coming by way of 5 different running backs, and through the air, 9 different receivers catching footballs, 23 balls caught in all, 303 yards as stated just a second ago for the 3 touchdowns, and defense as well, man, just laying it on thick. Unbelievable. Allowed Maryland, Chris, only 66 total yards of offense. Third-string quarterback Max Bortenschlager. I'm going to be saying that just like that for the rest of the show as long as we talk about Maryland. Max Bortenschlager, 3 of 12, 16 yards, no touchdowns. Didn't throw any picks, however, was forced to fumble the ball 3 times because Ohio State's defense all day long, Chris, just up in his grill. So give it to me, brother. I mean, what negatives? Well, actually, I know of at least one negative topic we are going to discuss here on the show, and that was the special teams play. And oh boy, yeah, that's going to be an interesting topic to talk about. But let's talk about the good things that you saw both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball from our beloved Buckeyes.
Sure. So, coming into the game, the spread was 31 points.
31 points.
And I was like, that's a little rich. This is
yes.
a team that beat Texas, their place.
Yep.
This is a team that beat a 3-1, or actually a 3-0 at the time.
3-0.
3-0 Minnesota team,
yep.
A Big Ten team, which Minnesota is typically kind of in the middle or even sometimes towards the top of that Western division, right?
At Minnesota, too. It was on the road.
Yeah, and 31 points. I'm like, man, that's a lot. I mean, I expect Ohio State to win, and to win probably fairly easy, but 31? Dude, they had it at half. They had the spread covered at half. I mean, it easily could have been 50-0 at half. I mean, if it wasn't for some of the gaffes that they had that, we'll get into later. Whenever you get twice the yardage of an opponent, you're like, yeah, we really dominated them, man. We doubled them up. We got twice the yardage. Like, 3 times as much, you're like, you almost never see 3 times as much because it's so rare to do it, and when you do, of course, you're like, man, we really extra special dominated them. They got 9 times as many yards, Andy. 9 times. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? 16 yards passing. Army had more passing yardage versus Ohio State.
Army, a triple option attack that had thrown the ball, 5 times the whole year coming into that Ohio State game, had more passing yards yesterday than Maryland. Yeah, silly.
Some people would say, well, they're on their third-string quarterback, the guy who's got a career in microbrewing waiting for him somewhere after his football career. But
he's going to make some damn fine liquor one of these days.
Yeah, but boy. I mean, the third-string quarterback didn't seem to be a problem when they beat Minnesota the week before, I mean, it was...
Exactly.
They had the first stringer in there when they played Texas. But, I mean, it's not just like one player, right? I mean, they scored 51 versus Texas. 51, Andy?
I know.
They were getting 1.2 yards a play versus Ohio State. 1.2 yards per play.
I know.
51 versus Texas.
But to your point, I mean, I guess to be fair, this was a third string quarterback against Texas. They were on their first stringer, and then he got hurt. Second stringer came in, and he looked damn good too. That Kasim Hill, true freshman, or maybe a redshirt freshman, one of the two, but he's a freshman. And then he got hurt, and they had to rely on Bortenschlager to win the game against Minnesota. Now, maybe we shouldn't give Maryland as much credit for beating Minnesota on the road because Minnesota just lost again yesterday to Purdue. Wow. So maybe that Minnesota win is not looking as shiny as it was when they beat them. But nonetheless, I mean, Bortenschlager, just unbelievable that Ohio State was able to just stifle this offense all game long.
Yeah, and I will just say this real quick. The West of the Big Ten is not good. It is not good.
Poopy in their pants.
I mean, maybe Wisconsin is okay.
That's the one glimmering hope for the West.
Maybe Iowa's okay. Division. But I mean, I don't know that either of those teams are in like the top 3 in the East. And then after that, it's like they're all fighting with Rutgers for the bottom spot in the East. I mean, Maryland. I mean, after looking at what they did to Minnesota, I'm like, wow, the West is just not good.
Mm-hmm.
That was not a game. I mean, this is what you expect to see versus a football subdivision team. To do this to not just a Division I team, but a Big Ten team was just, I mean, it's crazy how dominant it was. It really was. I mean, and it starts with that defensive line. They couldn't block them. Didn't matter who it was. Nick Bosa was just going free pass to the quarterback.
Ridiculous.
It didn't matter. I mean, it didn't matter. Second string, third string. They had that Chase Young comes in there. Caused the fumble, and then. But yeah, I mean, it was it didn't matter who was in there. They couldn't stop them. The linebackers finally showed up. They've been kind of quiet this year. Haven't really been big playmakers. But another good game from Dante Booker, stringing 2 of them in a row.
Yep.
Jerome Baker. We haven't seen much of him this year. He's shown flashes in the past, but he played a great game the whole time he was out there. Baron Browning looked really good.
Led the team in tackles.
Yeah, and so, I think that, that defense is pretty ridiculous right now. And the offense is looking good. I mean, we'll see what they can do versus, a tighter competition. But here's the thing. We knew Maryland's offense was bad, but their defense was supposed to be at least okay. It was supposed to be a tougher test than Rutgers, Army, and UNLV and all that. But, pretty much the offense just did whatever they wanted. So, if it wasn't for gaffes, this game could have been 70-0.
Well, those gaffes that you and you're in reference to and I alluded to a second ago, we might as well get into them. Special teams play was really the one glaring black eye in that game. If not for some of those gaffes, Chris, 62 points. It should have been 63 points because redshirt freshman punter Drew Chrisman bobbles a snap on an extra point. Right. I know Nurenberger missed a 46-yard field goal.
He missed a 29-yarder and then had a 46-yarder blocked.
Or that's what it was. He missed the 29-yarder. He had the 46-yarder blocked. And then, to top it all off, after Jerome Baker picks up Nick Bosa's caused fumble, takes it 20 yards to the house for Ohio State's first defensive touchdown of the year. They finally get one in the book 6 games into the season. Hell, by this point last year, I think they had, 4 or 5 defensive touchdowns. But nonetheless, still great to see. Baker scoop and score for 20 yards. And then Ty Johnson turns around and takes a kickoff 100 yards, answers back for a touchdown. So the special teams play not very good at all yesterday. And you know what's funny is that Urban and Kerry Combs are the 2 coaches that are in charge of special teams.
Right.
So What do we say about special teams up to this point, Chris? And when people ask Urban about special teams, and he's like, boy, that's, like after the game, somebody asked him, what about the special teams and this and that? And he was just like, I don't know what's going on. And boy, our kicker, we don't have we're the only team in the country that can't kick down the field. And he was pretty harsh on Nurenberger without specifically calling him out by name, but he certainly did by when he said, we've got a fifth-year senior kicker that's not playing real well. And so, do we get on Urban? Do we get on Combs? Or do we just kind of chalk it up and say, hey, the special teams are what they are. Ohio State's going to continue to go out there, play great defense and offense, and win the game. I mean, are these mistakes that can happen, though, against the Penn States of the world, against the Michigans, the Michigan States, stuff like that, to where if they're making these kind of mistakes, they're still going to be able to win the game? Because obviously they were able to make them and win big. But down the road, is this something that can continue to happen?
Well, no. If they're going to get to where they want to get, they're going to be playing elite level competition, and they're not going to be able to do that. So
yeah, yep.
And it's actually worse than what you even said. You just gave kind of the highlights that I was keeping tally over here. So they had a 22-yard punt they shanked. It was like Chrisman kicking out of the end zone, kicks it 22 yards. They had a delay of game on a kickoff.
Yeah.
Are you freaking kicking me? Are you kidding me? I'm like, delay of game on a kickoff, and later in the game, in the fourth quarter, they had to take a timeout before getting another delay of game on a punt.
Yes. It was like a comedy of errors when it came to the special teams. So what's going on? Seriously.
And they had a kickoff go out of bounds. That's a penalty as well.
Yep.
So there was just one gaffe after another. So I'm going to start with, it's time for my annual rant on this. I believe I've done it in previous seasons. But this season,
we need to cue up some sort of music or sounder or bumper like, Chris's rant. Here we go, folks.
And now it's time for the Intergalactic Buckeye Fan's Buckeye Leafcast rant.
Okay, so are you familiar with the concept of risk-reward, like the risk-reward ratio?
Absolutely.
Right. So the idea here is, in general, you want to pick situations where the reward is as good as the risk or more. And if something's really risky for a small reward, you're not going to do it. So it's like, okay, you're at a national park, and there's a chasm that's kind of questionable. Could you leap across it, right? And your buddy's like, well, I'll give you $1 if you leap across that. So you're like,
a whole dollar.
It's really just not worth it. So yeah, that's all right. You can keep your $1. It's like, or if I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh, Andy, I'll flip a coin. If it's heads, I'll pay you $1. If it's tails, you pay me $10. But I don't think I'm going to take that.
No.
Why would I do that?
I don't know. That actually doesn't sound like a bad deal. I could get $1 out of it.
Right.
50 shot. So you're saying there's a chance.
Right. Yeah. So, there's certain things. So I'm telling you, they have, meanwhile, Urban does this thing where instead of just kicking the ball out of the back of the end zone and the opposing team gets it at the 25, he tries to pin them inside the 25 by pooching it about the 5-yard line and just covering like half the field. So he has all 11 coverage guys on half the field. So they kind of kick it to like one side of the field, hoping that you can't get outside of that, and then they can get you inside. Well, what tends to happen, about a third of the time, they get to the 25 or beyond anyway. So you'd have been better off if you just kicked it out of the back of the end zone. That's about a third of the time. I watched these, and I haven't taken like close statistics, but just that's kind of what it feels like, my gut feel. The rest of the time, it's between the 15 and the 25. Once in a blue moon, they get you actually inside the 15. Maybe once every other game or something, but typically it's between the 15 and the 25. But meanwhile, so the reward is about 10 yards. You get between it's 0 to 10 yards. So, 1 to 10. That's the reward. You're risking going 75 yards the other way. So you can sit there and even get them like, oh, we pinned him at the 15, 5 kicks in a row. That's 50 yards. And then you let one go for 75 yards. And it's like you were still better off just kicking out of bounds. Having 5 good ones versus 1 bad could just wipe it all out. And the thing is, like I said, at least a third of the time, they get to the 25 or beyond anyway. It's not that uncommon for the opposing team to get a kickoff versus Ohio State that makes it to the 35, 40-yard line because they're allowing every single kick to be returned. Where most teams, at least half of them are kicked out of the back of the end zone or deep enough in the end zone that the guy takes a knee. The risk reward on this makes no friggin' sense. Well, the other thing is when you're kicking it to the side of the field, you also run a higher risk of kicking it out of bounds, and it's automatically at the 35. Where if you're just kicking it deep, you're probably not going to go out of bounds. Like most of the time, it's going to, they're reducing those number of out of bounds penalties quite a bit too. So it's just like, to me, I just can't imagine that at the end of the day, they're actually better off because the risk reward is so screwed against you. That ratio is just so poorly in your favor when you do this strategy. And they're like the only team in the country that I know of that even does it, probably because everybody else has figured this out that, hey, this isn't a good idea. But yet Urban continues to do it over and over again. So, all right, I'm done with that. I'm just so friggin' sick of seeing it, but I mean, I've just got to, it's one of those things, the serenity prayer.
Serenity now. Hey,
accept that which I cannot change. The courage to change that which I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I know there's nothing I can do about this. So channeling my inner Zen master here.
Well, see, I was kind of thinking of George Costanza on Seinfeld and his serenity prayer, serenity now, but it doesn't end up helping, and he ends up just bottling up all that anger, and then people just blow up, So maybe you should just blow up. You got to blow up and rant every now and again.
Yeah. This is what I have.
This is what we have you for, sir. This is what I have you for, is to come on, give great analysis like that. I mean, you completely just broke down kicking the friggin' ball off. Nobody's going to talk like that. Nobody is going to look that deep into kickoffs. But my man, the Intergalactic Buckeye Fan, Chris Stefanick, dude, you just completely, just absolutely dove in and dug deep and broke down kickoffs. And you're absolutely right. To what extent do they have a kicker, though, that can kick it out of bounds? Do they have a kicker that can get it that deep every single time?
I mean, they should. Plenty of teams have it. So, I mean, if other teams can have it, it's worth it for Ohio. I mean, they could get a walk-on to do this, Andy. They don't have to waste a scholarship. Most schools, many schools, don't give scholarships to kickers. So, and there's plenty of players who would love to just be on the team. They're like, okay, I'll pay my own way through school, and in return, I'll get a lot of tail from the the student body. I'll take my rewards from the student body.
Well, that's a risk reward right there. I mean, a lot of tail, but you can get something else in the process. You know what I'm saying? So, but the reward in that one,
Yeah, so, I mean, it's not like it's a bad deal to walk on and be a kicker at Ohio State. You're not even, it's not even like nearly as demanding as some of the other positions, right? They just sit there on the sidelines practicing kicking the majority of the time. So, yeah, I don't know, man. Like I said, I have the serenity to accept that which I cannot change.
It starts with Urban. It starts with Kerry Combs. They're the guys that are the coaches of the special teams. And, does Urban need to maybe bring in like a special teams specialist? I mean, I'm sure there are coaches out there that probably, or at least, some guys on the staff that might have a better idea of what to do when it comes to the special teams. Because, special teams has been a sore spot for Ohio State, not just this year, but, in years past. It seems like the one thing that fans and members of the media are harping on, among other things, too, obviously this year, the quarterback controversy being the biggest one. But special teams always seems to be like a topic of interest for people. It's almost as if we're trying to find something to bitch about when it comes to Ohio State football. Because, I mean, seriously, it's like they're so damn good every single year. And, yeah, do they win national championships every year? Are they at Alabama level? Well, pretty damn close, but not quite. But still, Ohio State football is so damn good, for the most part, the kings of the Big Ten. And at some point, it's like you almost have to find something bad, something wrong, when everything else is so good. Like, you have to find a reason to bitch about something.
Well, I mean, Andy, the other teams still keep getting first downs, It's like they don't stop. They don't get 3 and outs on every single drive when the other team has the ball. They don't score a touchdown on every play when they have it. So, of course, we're furious with the way Urban's running this team.
At the end of the half, they were up 41-7, and I'm like, "Hey, are you good now? Or are you?" No, I'm still pissed off. You're winning 41-7. What more do you want? I mean, we've talked about it before, Chris. These guys have scholarship players too. I mean, seriously, some Buckeye fans just need to kind of take a step back, bring it in, and say they're going to make some plays every now and again. That's going to happen, okay? You just allowed a Maryland football team that was averaging 400 yards a game. You held them to 66 yards. They didn't score their first offensive touchdown till about, 4 or 5 minutes left in the game, and that was against Ohio State's third and fourth stringers out there. So, I mean, what more do we want sometimes?
I hear you, man. It's, for me, it's like, what is the reason why you're actually watching Ohio State? Seriously, what is it? I mean, are you doing it because this is something you enjoy? Because it doesn't seem like this is something you enjoy. Maybe you need to question why you're spending this time on it. And, if you're going to the games, all this money and all that, that's pretty much a day, when you go there.
Oh, yes, it is an event. And I tell you what, you better save up and break open the pocketbook, man. If you're going to go to an Ohio State football game, it's not cheap. Seriously.
Yeah. So, I remember the 2015 season. It's not the first time I've said this on this podcast, so forgive me, but the 2015 season, Ohio State went 12-1. They beat their rivals, beat Notre Dame in the bowl game, and the whole year was miserable. The whole year was miserable. I was not happy the whole year because they weren't as good as the year prior, and we expected them to be at least as good as the year prior, right? Because they had everybody back.
And they won a national championship, so why shouldn't they go out and destroy teams 85-0 every game?
But it was a disappointment. They had set the bar was so high, and after that season, I looked back and I was like, that was the stupidest thing. I won't say it's the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life, but that was really stupid. I'm like, why didn't I not sit back and enjoy, which was still one of the best Ohio State teams I've ever got to witness in my life, at least from a talent perspective. That
Absolutely.
Went 12-1 and beat their rivals, won their bowl game. I'm like, what the heck's wrong with me? So I'm like, I'm never doing that again. I'm going to enjoy it, win or lose. I'm going to enjoy it. Even when they're losing, I'm going to enjoy it. And this is entertainment. And I will find things, the highs, the lows, just that, that your juice gets flowing. You can sit there and enjoy that even, like the rest of my week, the other 6 days of the week, there's not a whole lot that gets my heart pumping like an Ohio State game does, right? And that's kind of an experience, it's like riding a roller coaster, it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Even when it's like something's going bad and your heart's pumping, you're like, oh, that's kind of a cool experience. Get the, I know I'm alive,
Yeah, I mean, there were, points in the game where I was actually kind of like, I was like, man, like my adrenaline was kind of going. I mean, Ohio State, they're coming out and kicking some butt those first couple of drives. Baker gets the scoop and score. And then when Ty Johnson returned the kick back, I felt alive at that point because I'm like, whoa, all right, we've got ourselves a game. Maryland just put themselves right back into it. And then Ohio State marches right back down the field and scores. And you're like, yes. And quite frankly, it is exciting when Ohio State is in just a nail biter. Just, you're just white knuckling it, you're gritting your teeth, your heart is kind of pounding a little bit, you got the adrenaline going, you're nervous, you're like, oh my gosh, man. But it's exciting, right? Well, how much fun is it to seriously, by halftime, when Ohio State's up 41-7, how much fun is that really? I mean, yes, we all want to see Ohio State play well, and it's always fun to see your team do extraordinarily well, because then afterwards you can say, dude, 62-14. I mean, we beat you guys 62-3 on your own field last year. We put 62 points up against you again. It's something. Yeah, it's bragging rights. It's exactly, I mean, but when they get into those crazy close games, Wisconsin last year on the road, overtime. I mean, it's like, wow, afterwards. And of course, you always feel better when you win. The Penn State game the very next weekend was obviously a different story. You're pissed off. Oklahoma this year, you're pissed off. But still, sometimes you have to have those crazy games to kind of reinvigorate the fun in watching Ohio State play some football. And I'm not going to sit here and say that yesterday wasn't fun. It was fun. But after, a while, when you knew that Ohio State had it in the bag, you just kind of like, all right, at this point, you're looking forward to see the young guys get in. You're looking forward to seeing some inexperienced guys get on the field and get some experience, which at this point, 6 games in, Chris, I mean, especially after, since the Oklahoma game, the last 4 games, I'm not so sure that there isn't a guy on the team who hasn't played yet. I mean, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this guy. We're sitting here talking and he's like, whose number such and such? And we're looking at the roster and like, oh, that's Nick Seam. Yeah. Like who the hell is that?
I know. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, who the hell is Nick Seam? Because the roster I was looking at didn't actually have him. It didn't have I think he's 51. And I'm like,
yeah, I can't even remember.
Like
poor Nick Seam.
Lineman.
Yeah, Nick Seam, if you're listening, sorry, buddy. We apologize. I mean,
I get my roster from the ozone.net. And, I just like the format of their roster. And like theirs does not have a number 51, or if it does, it was clearly not him. It was like somebody who got kicked off the team.
So I am on Ohio State's official website right now on the roster. Number 51 out of Wadsworth, Ohio, senior defensive lineman, Nick Seam. Good call, brother. God, 50. I had no idea.
Yeah, I'm looking at the ozone.net. It goes, number 50 is Nathan Brock, whoever the heck that is. Number 52, Wyatt Davis. So there's like no 51 even listed on that. So good for the official website for having Nick Seam.
Yeah, but it was
the targeting was pretty
targeting. Yeah. So what'd you think? All right, Denzel Ward, very early in the game, like midway through the first quarter, just plows into Tavon Jacobs, former OSU commit who decommitted and stayed home in his home state to go to Maryland. Plows into him. They review it. They say, yeah, it's targeting. You're out of here. That one looks suspect. Damon Arnett, maybe a little more clear cut, but I even thought the Damon Arnett hit wasn't as egregious as they made it seem like. What do you think? Fair or unfair?
Well, I mean, I think by the letter of the law, it was targeting because I'm not a rules expert, but I think it's just basically if there's helmet-to-helmet contact, they have the right to give you targeting. And his helmet did graze the other guy's helmet. Denzel Ward, when you're running at full speed at somebody else trying to bring him to the ground, that's going to happen sometimes. But I mean, if you watch,
exactly.
Denzel Ward, led with his shoulder. He you can see him turning his head away to try to not hit with the helmet.
Exactly.
And there's incidental contact. It's like, come on. I mean, what are you supposed to do? Not tackle the guy? Be like, well, I guess tackling the guy is a penalty now, which is basically what it is. I mean, I don't know what to do. I mean, it's the whole concussions thing and all that is a terrible, terrible thing, and something needs to be done about it. I don't have the answers as what that something is, but it certainly did not seem like, in your words, fair. You're like, fair or unfair? I would say that's not fair because, I mean, Denzel Ward did everything right. He did what you're supposed to do.
He did.
And he got penalized for it. Now going to the Damon Arnett one, this is one where it was a little more egregious. The issue was, Damon Arnett's running up to tackle a guy who's running at him. They're both standing up straight, running at each other. He starts going into his movement to tackle the guy, and as he's doing that, the quarterback,
Bortenschlager slides.
He drops to the ground to slide. At that point, the angle completely changes, and you don't have 100% mastery of your body, especially when you're flying at the speeds these guys are.
Exactly.
Sorry, go out there and go sprint across your yard, and then try to at the last second, sprint towards a tree, and at the last second try to squirt around it. And I mean, see just how easy that is. I mean, if you really truly wait to the last second, it's going to be dicey. You might be getting a little scraped up. You know what I mean? I mean, you don't have, like I said, you don't have 100% mastery of your body. So, did Arnett do something wrong? Did he do not what he was trained to do? I don't know. I mean, I don't know how they train them to tackle in that situation, but it's so, I mean, it's such a split second thing, and the guy, Bortenschlager changed the angle, and it happened. There was that,
and that's my problem with, number one, Denzel Ward, as far as I'm concerned, that was a bullcrap call. Like you said, I mean, he led with his shoulder. He tried to even, it looked like, turn his head away to avoid that contact. He still gets called for a targeting penalty. Complete bullcrap. And then Damon Arnett, I'm sorry, I call shenanigans on that call as well, because like you said, Damon Arnett is starting, he's running towards Bortenschlager full speed, and his objective is to stop Bortenschlager on third down from getting yards for the first. And so he starts running full speed at Bortenschlager to tackle him, and Bortenschlager decides at the last second, I got this guy running full speed at me, I'm going to go ahead and slide. But at that point now, Damon Arnett is moving in towards the hit, and it was just kind of a perfect storm of circumstances to where Bortenschlager's sliding, Arnett whacks him, Bortenschlager rolls over in the turf. They don't throw the flag right away, but then when Bortenschlager doesn't get up, the refs call a timeout and go review the play and then deem that it was, a targeting penalty. And I've got the answer for you, Chris. This is the answer on how to avoid concussions in football. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Two-hand tag or flag. I mean, I'm almost serious. If you do not want guys to get hurt playing a contact sport where the objective is to slam your body into somebody else's body at full speed sometimes, and that's just going to happen in a football game when it's a contact sport, then take away the contact. Just make it a friggin' two-hand tag game. Or Lou Holtz came up with an idea and said, you know what? Take off all the pads. Take off all the pads. Take off the helmets. Let's go back to 1930s Leatherhead-style football and play that way. And I guarantee dudes are not going to be launching themselves into other guys and hitting the way they are if you don't have the amount of protection on.
Yeah. I've got some buddies that play rugby. I've never played it, but I'm not that crazy. But these guys play rugby, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you definitely do not want to tackle a guy hard because you will hurt yourself. You're gonna hurt yourself. You are gonna hurt yourself. So you learn quickly to pull up when you're going to tackle somebody. You definitely pull up. So
exactly.
There's some interesting statistics on injuries in rugby too, but
I was just getting ready to say, how many concussions in rugby do we hear about? I'm sure it happens.
Yeah, there's a lot of injuries in rugby too. Don't get me wrong.
Because rugby's not as popular.
It's not as.
Oh, I'm sure.
People think it is though. People think it's like, oh, rugby, they must be just like dropping like flies. It's like, no, you're right. The fact that you don't have pads changes the equation completely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you can't be fearless. Launching your body at people. So, but yeah, I kind of felt bad for Bortenschlager. I mean,
I did too.
He was crying after that. I swear to God, I'm looking at him like, is he crying? I'm like, oh my God, I think he's crying. I don't think I've ever seen a football player cry on the field from being hurt. I've seen people cry from like they just lost and they're really sad that they lost, or cry from tears of joy. I've seen that. I seriously don't know if I've seen somebody cry from pain. He got his bell rung, so maybe his brain not actually working right at that point. But
I shouldn't sit here and laugh at that. I mean, at someone else's expense of getting hurt, but
especially a concussion. But it's just I saw that, I'm like, man, I can't tell you when I saw somebody cry on the football field from being hurt.
Well, that's 2 games in a row now that Ohio State's made someone cry, right? Or at least get close to tears. Because, last week against Chris Ash, we had said, or at least poop their pants or something, cry, poop their pants, cry because they just pooped their pants. But yeah, that was kind of, it was tough to see. I mean, I obviously didn't want to see Bortenschlager be injured. But when, he got hit and he rolled over and then the refs stopped the game and then they're like, oh, we're going to go ahead and review the play. We didn't throw a flag, but we see the guy's totally hurt now. We're going to go ahead and stop play and review it. And, yeah. That's definitely, he targeted him. I don't know. I thought it was bull crap, but. Who am I, Chris? I'm just a guy with a microphone at times who sits in a press box, watches football games, and, eats some potato chips and popcorn while I'm doing it, so. So what else did you see from the Buckeyes that we didn't talk about that maybe you want to get into a little bit? The rushing game, I had said before, 50 carries, 281 yards, 5 touchdowns, and they get 5 TDs from 5 different guys. Dobbins, 13 carries, 96 yards and a score. Weber, 13 carries, 59 yards and a score. Barrett with 59 yards on 8 carries and a score. Antonio Williams gets in late, has 3 carries, 22 yards and a score. And then our boy Paris Campbell on a reverse, 24-yard reverse, 2 carries, 19 yards, and that 24-yard score. And he had a 5-yard loss, obviously, on his other run. But so a great day on the ground, too, from the Buckeyes. And that was kind of the strong suit. Maryland was supposed to be this, fairly stellar rush defense. I think they were allowing about 130 yards a game up to that point. But, boy, the Buckeyes just ran roughshod all over them. Yeah.
I mean, I think they could have ran the ball at will. It just seemed like in the first half, they could have ran the ball at will in the second half as well. But they were, Urban was determined to be balanced. So he was mixing in the pass. And, if he needed to win the game, like the passing game wasn't working and the game was in doubt, I think we would have saw, a steady dose of the power run game. But he didn't need to. So he was like, oh, we're going to be balanced. We're going to work on the pass. But they could have ran the ball at will. The nice thing to me is because, that really wasn't so much of a question mark, but it's more the passing game is the one that's been in doubt. And the passing game looked good. The wide receivers were getting open. Yep. They were making, big time moves. I mean, Ben Victor had some awesome plays. Paris Campbell is just like a freaking lightning bolt. I mean, that guy is so fast. He's turning into quite the playmaker.
He is.
And the offensive line is really, really protecting, And this is one of these things that has me putting a little asterisk next to my optimism for JT Barrett. So versus Oklahoma, they were putting a lot of pressure, and JT was terrible. Since then, the offensive line has protected, and he's looked good. And even in this game, versus Maryland, they started off the first quarter, the protection was great. They moved down the field, no problems passing. I think he started 8 for 9 or something, his first 9 passes. And then there was a series or two where they got pressure, and the balls were overthrown. They were erratic. But it was just real short-lived, and after that, the protection came back. And even in the second half, when you had the second stringers in there, even the second string was protecting. Dwayne Haskins had all day back there to throw. So, I mean, there's a couple ways to look at it. One is, you get excited that the offensive line is protecting. I mean, because if the offensive line is protecting, it doesn't matter whether JT can't throw when he's under pressure or not, because he's got time. And he looks pretty good when he has time. He can pick you apart. But then the question is okay, they're not going to be able to do that all the time. And, how good is he going to be under pressure? I don't know. I mean, you look at guys like Baker Mayfield, he was under pressure the entire game, and it didn't matter. He was still completing darts down the field, right? And so some quarterbacks can do that, and some can't. To me, I don't know that JT is the kind of guy, excuse me, I don't know that JT is the kind of guy where if you're not protecting him, he's still going to be able to win you the game. So that worries me a little bit, because I think other schools, I'm not sold that Isaiah Prince is now all of a sudden, God's gift to pass protection.
Yeah, let's not get crazy. I mean, let's take it into context, right? These were 4 very winnable football games against 4 very subpar opponents. And yes, we saw what happens when Ohio State plays an elite level talent team up to their level. And let's put an asterisk. I think you're completely right. These last 4 games, let's put an asterisk by all of the stats that JT threw up. And let's wait and see when they play Penn State. Maybe even Nebraska this weekend on the road. And we can talk about that in a second. But I'm with you. I so want to believe that JT is back, and this is the JT that we've always seen. But, it's against 4 teams that, he should have done this against, that he was expected to do this against. So until they do play Penn State, and I think that's the game that really everybody's focusing on. We're kind of even overlooking Nebraska. Hell, earlier in the week, people were asking JT Penn State questions before they even played Maryland. Right. And he was like, come on, man. He finally was just like, what do you guys want? I don't know how I'm going to play against Penn State until I play against Penn State. We are playing Maryland this weekend, and then even after the Maryland game, people are asking other guys Penn State questions. And it's like, well, we'll deal with Penn State when they come up. This upcoming game is Nebraska. That's what we're going to focus on. So let's not try and look too far ahead. But quite frankly, it's kind of easy to do when, Penn State is the big game looming on the schedule at the end of the month.
Well, in Nebraska last year, number 10 in the country, Nebraska Cornhuskers come to town and lose 62-3. So yeah, I can't forget that. It's like maybe Nebraska's turned the corner and they're a lot better than they were last year.
Yeah.
We just last year, it's not like this was 4 years ago, just last year beat them 62-3. So I'm overlooking them as well. I'm having a hard time believing that Nebraska is somebody to be feared. It's just, I don't know. I'm just not seeing it. I mean, they're 3-3 this year. Last year they were number 10 in the country coming in and had one loss or something. This
exactly.
Year 3-3 with losses to a MAC team, in Northern Illinois.
At home.
I mean, their only victories are against the, mighty Scarlet Knights of Rutgers, the Fighting Lovey Smiths, and Arkansas State. I mean, those are their 3 victories. So, meanwhile, they lost to Oregon, which isn't a terrible lot. They were at Oregon and lost by a touchdown. Oregon's
respectable.
It's not like the 2014 Oregon, but Oregon's not ranked this year. But they're a Pac-12 team. They got scholarship players, right?
Right.
And then they lost to Wisconsin by like 3 scores. So
they were hanging tight with them, and then Wisconsin pulled away. I think the final score was like 34-17 or 38-17, something like that. So I think this is going to be another one where we run them out of town on a rail, or I guess we're playing at their place, so, Yeah, and let's talk about, this is a Nebraska team that right now, they're middle of the road scoring offense in the Big Ten. They're middle of the road total offense, rushing offense. They're actually a little bit lower than the middle. They're passing offense. They're a little bit better. So they tend to throw the ball a little bit better than they do running it. And their defense is, just average at best. I mean, they're just offensively and defensively a very average middle of the road Big Ten team. I don't see why Ohio State, who right now is boasting the top offense, Chris, in the Big Ten in scoring, total offense. They're now second in rushing offense after yesterday's game. But 3 of the 4 major categories, they're the number 1 offense in all of the Big Ten. And it's funny because the offense is like the one thing that we've been harping on, especially the passing offense. And they're leading the Big Ten over Penn State, who's at an average of 291 yards a game. Ohio State's the only team averaging over 300 passing yards a game. Once again, though, maybe inflated stats because of the last 4 games. But still, nonetheless, I mean, this is one of the best, this is pretty much the best offense in the entire Big Ten. And I don't see why they just, like you said, they don't run Nebraska out on a rail.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a good game. This is going to be one where, I forget, what's their coach's name, Riley?
Mike Riley.
The Nebraska faithful are going to be calling for his head after this because
I think they already are. There's rumors out there right now they want to bring Scott Frost in from Central Florida, who of course played quarterback at Nebraska back in the late 90s.
Right. Which is looking like that might be a pretty decent hire because Central Florida is looking pretty darn good.
I know.
But Nebraska, their fan base, they think that it's still the 90s and that they should be out there competing for national titles. And that train has sailed. I mean, I don't know that program's ever coming back. I mean, forever's a long time, right?
Yeah, I don't want to say ever, but not in the near future.
But man, because one thing you got to remember is there's like no in-state talent in the state of Nebraska.
Oh.
They've got to go to Texas, they got to go to California, and white players. They can't do it on the local talent, and that's hard, especially when you haven't been good since the '90s. So, but the fan base still thinks it's one of those things where like, if the other team gets a first down, they're not happy. They're still in that kind of like Ohio State mindset. Their expectations don't match reality, even like remotely close. So, and they're going to get embarrassed. I think they're going to get embarrassed in this game. So it's if they were in the East, they would really be getting embarrassed. They're lucky that they're in the West, where they can at least have a shot at finishing in the top half of the division, because they would be, better than Rutgers, I guess, if they were in the East, and that's about it.
Right now, Nebraska 3-3 overall. They are 2-1 in the conference. They're sitting right behind Wisconsin there in the West Division, and
Illinois is terrible. Rutgers is terrible. Those are the teams they beat.
One win against the East Division, one win against the West Division, and then they lost to their division rival last night in Wisconsin. So, Nebraska, I wish this were the Nebraska of the old days. I mean, that's why we wanted them to come into the conference in the first place, right? That's why we went down and we stole them out of the Big 12, because it was a regional thing. And Nebraska, I mean, let's not forget Nebraska, back in 01, if I'm not mistaken, and I think 2005. I mean, even up until then, throughout the 2000s, they had some good teams, and unfortunately, since they've come into the Big Ten, man, what is it? I think the Big Ten, there's like a curse. Rutgers had some pretty damn good teams with Greg Schiano back in the 2000s. They come into the Big Ten, they are horrendous. Nebraska, though, they have really not made a dent in the Big Ten and been legitimate since coming into the conference. However, though, now that I say that, I do remember, didn't they play for two conference titles? I know they at least played one. I know they played Wisconsin.
I'm not sure.
I know they played Wisconsin for one. I know they played. Oh, so they did play one. All right, we're gonna give them one. But really, I mean, Nebraska, they haven't really been as Nebraska-esque as I think a lot of Big Ten fans were hoping for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Nebraska, they're a top 5 team as far as total wins in all of college football.
I know. Thanks to the Tom Osborne days and back in the 60s and 70s heydays, you know.
I mean, it wasn't too long ago. I was trying to find statistics up to date, and I can't find them. But in spring of 2015, number 4 all-time wins was Nebraska, number 5 Ohio State. So they were actually, well, you know what? Now I'm looking at I'm thinking they're still ahead of them, because at the time, they're definitely still ahead. Because I read the stat wrong. I was thinking they were ahead by 2 wins, but they were actually ahead by 18 wins in 2015. So they have more wins than Ohio State. Ohio State hasn't closed that gap yet. They're getting closer and closer. And at this rate, they're going to pass them for, as long as this trajectory keeps going for a few. It's not going to take too long before they pass them. But yeah, it's Michigan 1, Texas 2, Notre Dame 3, Nebraska 4.
See, that's crazy, man. I didn't realize that, seriously, Nebraska was ahead of Ohio State in all-time wins.
Ohio State 5. Oklahoma and Alabama were tied for 6th in 2015. So I'm assuming Alabama's past them now. So Alabama 6, Oklahoma 7, Penn State 8, Harvard 9, and the University of Pennsylvania was 10 at this. So I'm not sure why they put some 2 schools in here, but
back then it was probably, I mean, when you had like 5 teams, and you played them, like 10 times a year, and you kept beating the same team over and over and over, of course you're going to have all those wins after a while. Right. Wow, that is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Nebraska used to be a blue blood program, and
for sure.
Anymore. They're not. I mean, that can change. Sometimes
it can.
Sometimes it changes, and sometimes you never come back. It's what was that program that got the death penalty?
SMU.
I mean, they were really good before that. I mean, granted, they were cheating, but
I was going to say, yeah, they were
really
paying their athletes to come play there, but yeah, nonetheless, they still were good. Yeah.
Yeah, they never recovered from that.
No.
There's been other schools too that used to be good and just have never recovered. And I don't know that. I mean, Nebraska, just because the local talent's not there.
Well, and see, that's the thing, though. I mean, Nebraska. It wasn't like they got in trouble for anything. It's not like they got, slapped with, some sort of penalty to make them be in the state that they're in right now. It's just kind of like they just fell off a little bit, I mean,
they should go back to running the freaking wishbone. That would be awesome. Dude, think about it. Think how hard it is to prepare for the option. Like everybody says, like, what is it? Your record after facing like Georgia Tech and like Navy and all these programs, like the record is like below 500 for teams. It should just be like 500, right? If you're like the following week, whoever it is you play, if you play Georgia Tech one week, the next week their opponents, it should just be basically 500, flip of a coin. But it's not. It's like 300 or something. Because
so you're saying that
you up having to prepare.
Really? Okay, that's what an
option team. And,
wow. See, wow.
That's when they were killing it, is back then when they were different than everybody's. Now they're trying to beat everybody else at the same game that everybody's playing. What they should just be like, screw that. We're not going to play the same game you guys are. We're going to beat you the way we do. And they can go after athletes. See, here's the thing. If you're playing this style of like spread them out with maybe a little power run in there, and you're trying to find the athletes that are really good at playing that style, you're competing with the Ohio States, or for them being more geographically close to California and Texas, they're competing with Texas and Oklahoma and USC and UCLA and all this, and to get those kind of athletes. But if they're going for wishbone style athletes, who are they competing with? Army, Georgia Tech? It's like that.
Yeah, I mean, Navy and Georgia Tech would probably be the two teams that would give them the most static as far as recruiting.
Yeah. So they could get the elite wishbone style athletes. So that would be kind of interesting if they did that. And it's just like now, like preparing for Nebraska would be an ordeal, where now it's just like preparing for any other school. So
yeah,
it's an interesting theory. They'd obviously have to get a new coach that had that as their, you wouldn't want to like ask Riley to do that. You bring in a coach that's their forte, right? But it'd be an interesting thing to see if they could get their mojo back. Because right now, here's the thing. Like, when was the last time Nebraska was really good? And then, like, what's the age of the kids they're recruiting? I mean, recruiting starts at, like, 15, 16 years old.
Yeah. Hey, like 5, Hey, Pee-wee football, it starts, man.
Yeah, and it's like, well, what did these kids in their lifetime, what are their memories of Nebraska? It's of them, like, getting owned by Ohio State 62-3,
Yeah, exactly.
Like, why do I want to go play there?
Well, and you know what the interesting thing would be, though? How many high schools out there do you think have that kind of athlete that would be good enough to bring Nebraska back to prominence that are running, a wishbone triple option style offense? I mean, you think there's still a lot of high schools out there running that kind of offense?
347.
What? Where did you get that number from?
I don't know. I just pulled it up. Yeah. I don't know, man.
I'm like, wow, how did he know? What do you do? Dude, you're just like the Google master. You just bring something up real quick, like, I'm on the high school football.org website, and it says, but I mean, seriously, I mean, I get what you're saying. I think that would be cool to see Nebraska back into their old school wishbone style offense, the days of Tommy Frazier and Lawrence Phillips, R.I.P., out there tearing it up. But, man, I think it would be tough to find those kinds of kids out there because everybody wants to play the spread. Everybody wants to play the, spread, read option. That's the new style of football. College football kind of created that, and then the high schools took over, and the pros have yet to kind of follow suit, but you see it slowly but surely. They're starting to implement a few read option, plays in the pros as well. So, yeah, maybe they just need a return. I don't know. It might be tough to do, but I would like to see that too. I think that'd be cool.
Well,
just to see if anything Nebraska come back to prominence. Because, you get into these debates, and you and I have talked about this, where it's like, well, we don't need any other teams to be good in the Big Ten. Like, Ohio State is Ohio State, and they're going to get into the top 4, just based on them and their name alone and who their head coach is and what their record is. And last year, I would say that point was proven. But still, it's kind of like a brotherhood kind of thing. Like, I want to see the other teams in the conference go out and play well and do well against non-conference opponents and in the postseason bowl games, because honestly, I still believe that makes Ohio State look better.
I hear you, man. Yeah, it certainly doesn't help when your opponents then go out and lose, like freaking Oklahoma losing to Iowa State this weekend.
Oh, man.
Jesus Christ. Well, I mean, it's like, okay, I'm torn because on like one side,
I know
it hurts our strength of schedule and it doesn't make that loss looks worse now.
Yes.
On the other, we have just jumped them.
Yep.
Pretty significantly. I mean, let's see, Ohio State's at 9, Oklahoma's at 12.
Yep. The new AP poll is out,
8, 12,
yep.
The other one. So, but at the same time, if Ohio State and Oklahoma wins out, they both win out. They're both one-loss teams, conference championships, and the committee's trying to decide who to squeak into that 4th spot. Head-to-head, Oklahoma's got the victory. So I'm like, I don't know that Ohio State gets in. If it comes down to that, they're going to be like, well, head-to-head, Oklahoma was a winner. So that one makes me a little nervous. Now, if Oklahoma gets a second loss somewhere along the way, which, is certainly inside the realm of possibility, then it was good that they, we want them out of the way to clear the path to the playoffs. We need at least we need somebody. It doesn't have to be Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma could make the playoffs and that could give us a rematch if we both make it, right? But we need some teams above us to lose in order to get where we want to go, right? So, this was one of them. So we'll see going forward, but.
Well, and another, and that was exactly what I thought too when I saw that. I was so happy because I was like, yes. And did you see? I think it was Iowa State's quarterback what he did after they won. Took an Iowa State flag and planted it on the 50-yard line.
Yeah, that was awesome. I mean, actually, I don't want to see that happen, but the one school I did want to see it happen was Oklahoma because Baker Mayfield had that coming. So.
Yeah, exactly. It was just desserts, and I was like, oh man, that is awesome to see. Take that, dude. Screw you. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I mean, seriously, screw you, Baker Mayfield. How does it feel, buddy? How does it feel, you punk? But the other part of me was kind of like, dude, this actually makes Ohio State's loss to them look worse. I mean, that kind of stuff probably does play into the mind of the committee is, your strength of schedule, your opponent's strength of schedule. And seeing Oklahoma lose at home to an unranked Iowa State team who was 2-2 does not look good for Ohio State. I mean, but nonetheless, we do need teams above us to lose. And so having Oklahoma lose, it's a double-edged sword there, but essentially, all right, they lost, and now even though they handed us a crazy defeat, they're ranked below us, and, we need teams to lose. Now, granted, this is the AP poll, the Amway coaches poll. These two polls have absolutely no bearing, at least not from a logistical standpoint, from the minds of the committee members. I mean, they completely have their own, ranking system that comes out in early November. So as far as what the AP and the coaches have to say, this absolutely means nothing as far as the college football playoff committee is concerned. But maybe it does play a little bit of a factor in the minds of those committee members because they do see these teams ranked in the polls, and maybe that does kind of come into their thinking when it comes time for them to, vote who they feel is, top 25 in their poll.
Right. Well, they definitely see wins and losses. So a 2-loss Oklahoma team is not going to make the playoffs over top of a 1-loss Ohio State team.
I would think not.
They're going to look at that, and they're not going to have them get in there. So there
right.
is that. So if it means, it's like if Oklahoma only has 1 loss, I'd rather them be undefeated than have 1 loss, if that makes sense. But 2 losses.
No, absolutely.
2 losses could help because then they're clearly below Ohio State.
Well, it's kind of like, either Oklahoma goes undefeated because then obviously that makes Ohio State look better if that's Ohio State's only loss is to an undefeated Oklahoma team. Or if they're going to lose, just let them keep losing. Just get them the hell out of the way. Fine. Be Vatek like back in 2014. Go 6-6.
Well,
and,
I'm not saying all of that, but 2 losses gets them out of the way.
2 losses.
I still want to see Oklahoma beat TCU that's sitting above us. So. Get one more loss.
And then there you go. Now we definitely have to root for Oklahoma because, they're going to be playing TCU, a team that is a couple spots ahead of the Buckeyes for sure.
But, and the ideal scenario, though, after Ohio State lost to Oklahoma, the ideal scenario was Oklahoma wins out, Ohio State still makes the playoffs, and then they get their chance for revenge versus an undefeated Oklahoma in the playoffs. Maybe it's
I know.
Maybe first round is Ohio State beats Alabama 1-4. And then second round for the title, the rematch, the rubber match.
That would have been
Ohio State, and Mayfield is the one left crying after the game.
And pooping his pants.
Yes.
And we stab him right in the middle of the chest with an Ohio State flag. All right, maybe that was...
Does he happen to be lying there on the ground? Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Oh, sorry there, Baker. I didn't mean to stab you in the chest while you're crying and pooping your pants after we just beat you again, like we did last year on your home turf. One more thing before we go, Mr. Stefanick, and that was another team that lost ahead of us. The 7th-ranked Smelly Rodents from up north. What did it mean for Ohio State to see Michigan lose to their other arch rival, the Michigan State Spartans? And now what does this mean for Sparty? I mean, this was a Spartan team that sucked last year, obviously much improved, walked onto Michigan's field like they did 2 years ago, and just played an unbelievable game and just absolutely shut Michigan down. And, I mean, that was a defensive battle. And, of course, if you were watching it, I mean, the rain was just pouring down. But they knew that they could expose Michigan's offense for being the absolute terrible offense that it is right now. And it doesn't matter if you have O'Korn, Spate, or the mascot in there at quarterback. Their offense sucks right now. And D'Antonio knew it, and they absolutely teed off on O'Korn last night. But, was this good for Ohio State? Was it bad? This is kind of like, once again, one of those, like the Oklahoma loss, I'm actually kind of torn on. And I know I've explained my reasons before, and I can explain them again, but I want to get your take on it real quick.
Yeah, well, I mean, the good thing if you're a Michigan fan is, you have Jim Harbaugh as your coach, who's the quarterback whisperer. So, of course, the quarterback play is going to be elite under Harbaugh while he's there. Wait a minute.
Chin scratcher on that one right there. Yeah.
Oh, wait, that's not happening. We're actually getting crappy play from the quarterbacks with Jim Harbaugh there.
I know. I mean, I would think that, Jim Harbaugh, I mean, we're talking about he was an elite quarterback at Michigan, a great quarterback at Michigan, a great quarterback in the pros, too. Maybe not great, but he was solid quarterback in the pros. You would think he'd be coming in here, and I mean, turning their passing offense around, and, that ain't happening. I mean, they're bad.
Well, he had a reputation in the NFL of being a quarterback whisperer. Like, everywhere he went, the quarterback would be crap, and he would turn them around, and they would be playing great. He resurrected Alex Smith's career, from the ashes, for example. And so that was one of the things people were like, quarterback's most important position on the field. We'll bring in Harbaugh. He'll get that position squared away, and it's going to be raining men in Ann Arbor. I don't know. It's happy days. We'll be back again for our favorite friends up north. So
our favorite smelly ribbons. Yeah, watching Michigan State beat Michigan, of course. Michigan. Yeah, it's always fun to watch them lose, but once again, I'm of that mindset that I really do want to see Michigan as good as possible when they play Ohio State, because quite frankly, I think it does put more meaning into the game. I think that it puts more hype into the game. Not that we necessarily need that for the game, us as Ohio State fans, but, let's face it. Since 2001, Ohio State's lost to Michigan 2 times. And it is kind of getting to the point where beating Michigan, it's still special. It still means something. But when it's like those 3 years, the Rich Rod years that Ohio State beat Michigan, and 2 of those games were like 42-7 and 37-7. I'm sorry, but beating up bad Michigan teams is just not fun. It's just not fun. It's just like watching them beat up on Maryland. And I want to see Michigan, damn it, play as good a football as they can, so when we take them on, much like last year's knee knocker in the shoe that went in double overtime, dude, your heart's pounding and it's racing, and it means a lot more because, damn it, it's Michigan. It's Michigan, man. And when you get that win, oh my God, it's just like you just hit the friggin' lottery. There's probably so many kids that are born in the month of July, because after that game, I'm sure, is when they're conceived, especially here in Columbus, because people are you're on cloud friggin' 9 after that, man,
Well, I'm going to disagree with you and say that beating bad Michigan teams is very fun. I still enjoy the hell out of that. So we'll just have to agree to disagree on that one.
All right.
But I will say this. Michigan was number 7 in the country coming into that game.
And there you go.
And had they won out, obviously they're going to be top 5 team, if not, top 3 team. If they were, if it's 11-0 Michigan team coming to Columbus, that would have been a huge feather in Ohio State's cap to get that victory. And And if they did lose, it would be you'd be like, well, they lost to the number 3 team in the country. It sucked, but at least it's not like losing to the Little Sisters of the Poor, right? So,
it's not like losing to Michigan back in 95 and 96 when they were 8-3 those years, and Ohio State was ranked number 2 and undefeated in the country, and then got beat. Yeah. Those are the kinds of Michigan losses that piss me off as well.
Right. Where we do play both Michigan and Michigan State, but Michigan State has no chance to be a top 10 team. They got just shellacked by Notre Dame. Now granted, Notre Dame is looking pretty good. So maybe Notre Dame's back, and that's not as bad of a loss as we thought it was at the time.
Yeah, only time will tell, obviously.
But it's not like, in previous years where it's well, if Michigan State wins, that's okay, because that means we got a top 10 matchup with Michigan State. It's one or the other, right? It's no, that's pretty much, that was we still have Penn State, which is a top 10 team, and if Wisconsin wins out and we play them in the conference championship, that they will clearly be a top 10 team as well, because they are currently. I don't know that that's going to happen, but they'll probably win the West, but I don't know that they're going to win out. I don't know that they're good enough to do that, but we shall see. But yeah, this basically took a top 10 team off of Ohio State's schedule. Maybe Michigan wins the rest of their games, and in which case, then.
Welcome to the biggest house in.
They'll probably they'll work their way back into the top 10 again. But that means that they've got to beat Penn State. That means they've got to beat Wisconsin. So it's not going to be easy for Ohio State, for Michigan to win the rest of their games if they have to go, at Happy Valley and at Camp Randall.
Yeah, exactly. They get their 2 arch rivals at home, which one of them they just lost to yesterday, and then the other they get at the end of the year in Ohio State. But then, they still have to travel to Happy Valley and Camp Randall. Those are 2 of the, I would say probably the 4 toughest places to play in the Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Penn State. And so luckily they got two arch rival games at home. Unfortunately, they lost one, but then they got to turn around and go travel to Happy Valley and Camp Randall. Those are not going to be easy games for them to win. Michigan might have at least 2, maybe 3 losses by the time they see Ohio State.
Right.
Because this defense, their defense cannot continue to hold them up. I mean, they have to score some points, dude.
Yeah, well, their quarterback play is terrible. They don't really have any playmakers. The offense is just not good. And I think when they go up against a team like Ohio State, that the quarterback's going to be under constant pressure. Good luck with that. That's all I got to say.
Exactly. Yep. It might be another 42-13 beatdown in the big house at the end of the year. That would be awesome. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to argue with thumping. I'm not going to argue with thumping Michigan either. I just like to thump a good Michigan. Thumping a bad Michigan, it just, it does. It seems like you're making out with your cousin or something like that. Yeah, okay, it's fun, but might be a little bit gross in the meantime,
It's not something you can really go brag about afterwards.
Exactly. Oh, man. Well, before we hop off the microphone, sir, why don't you give everybody the dish on what's going on with you outside of the Buckeye Leafcast?
Yeah, sure. So I do have another podcast. It's called Choice Conversations, where it's a personal development podcast where we talk about how you can improve your life in ways outside of sports. So relationships, finances, mental health, just finding your purpose and being happy. So it's choiceconversations.com. Come check it out.
There it is. Hit the Intergalactic Buckeye Fan up and talk a little bit about whatever you choose. Visit them at choiceconversations.com. You can also hit them up on Twitter at ChoiceConvo. So this episode of the Buckeye Leafcast has been brought to you by the Intergalactic Buckeye Fan and Choice Conversations. Also brought to you by Christie's Cleaning Services, LLC. It's not clean until it's Christy clean. Visit her Facebook page at Christie's Cleaning Services, LLC. And also brought to you by Columbus Wired for your premier source for Central Ohio sports and beyond. Check us out at columbuswired.net. So there you have it, sir. I'm going to say 45-13 Ohio State this weekend over Nebraska.
Well, all right. So here you go. They gave up 42 to Oregon. I think Ohio State's going to get more than Oregon. So I'm going to go with, how about 45? That's right around Ohio State's average. It also works out to be, I believe, 6 touchdowns and a field goal. So this is assuming they can actually kick extra points in this game. We'll see. The jury remains out. And Ohio State is giving up 16 points a game, but they do have some little sisters of the poor in there. So I'm going to say they're going to give up a little more than their average. Where meanwhile, Nebraska is averaging 28 points a game. I'm going to say they're not going to get their average. So I'm going to say 21. So how about 45-21?
All right. There you go, folks. The Intergalactic Buckeye Fans is 45-21. I say 45-13. And I'm not sure what the spread's at right now. Have you seen a spread?
Yeah, they usually release it like 5 minutes after we finish the game, so then we're like, God damn it. The guys talking peace, but so be it.
Well,
Serenity prayer.
Serenity now. So on that note, sir, let's leave them like we always do. OH!
Oh.
Go Bucks!
I want to go back to Ohio State, to old Columbus town, to the stadium to hear the band, by far the finest in the land. I want to go back to Ohio State, to old Columbus town. I want to go back, I gotta go back to Ohio.